Welcome back to Boys and Ghouls Film Review, folks. I'm your host, Sarah Stephenson, and this is my co-host, Mike Stephenson.
Hi, guys.
And tonight we'll be reviewing Bram Stoker's Dracula that was released in 1992. As you well know, we just reviewed the Invitation, and I thought we might take a step back to review...
see how it's really done.
Review an old version of the Dracula story a little bit.
And I'd say an older and better one.
Yeah, considering this one is still talked about, everyone still talks about it and watches it and continues making comparisons with other Dracula movies that came out recently. And it's still...
holds its own quite nicely.
Yeah, it still holds its own all the time we watch it.
But look at it. Look who's involved in it. We have... Produced by Francis Ford Coppola.
You may know him as the producer who helped with George Lucas when he was doing his own film projects.
When American Graffiti and American Graffiti? Yeah. He helped him, yeah.
Yeah, he also did his own, what's it called? Godfather. That movie.
Yeah, he did Godfather. He also did, I think, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
See that guy?
He likes to do, I think he does biodramas too, type thing.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, he does a lot of good groovy things. He's not stuck in one mould.
Not one genre, for all we know.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice that he's did this. And I know the one of the film editors who helped work on this project.
Well, do you?
Yeah, well, we are on Facebook. We chat sometimes.
Which one's that one?
Oh,
Nicholas, Glenn, or Anne?
Anne. Yeah, she's a good chatter, and we often discuss filmmaking. Sometimes we disagree on things, but we make good conversation.
That's cool. Anyway, getting back to what else. Produced by Francis Ford Coppola, Fred Fuchs, Fucks, and Charles Mulvihill. I think is right pronunciation. Mulvehill. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Screenplay by James Hart, based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, obviously.
And the history of Vlad Tepes, I think.
Well, yeah, that comes with it.
Considering that this is based off Vlad Tepes' history a little bit.
Yes.
And then
Vlad the Impaler to his friends.
Yes, and so they kind of used a mishmash of the history of Vlad the Impaler and pushed it into
the Bram Stoker's
Dracula story.
So you get a bit of a backstory happening.
Yeah, and why he is what he is.
Yes. Now, moving right along. Budget, $40 million. Box office, about $215 million. Did quite well, despite what some of the critics said, which I'll talk about later on. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. Now, the cast. I won't go through everybody.
There's they kind of picked really good mainstream actors for this movie.
Well, they did. Now, Gary Oldman, he played Count Dracula. Vlad the Impaler. Whatever. Winona Ryder plays Mina Harker.
Or Mina Murray.
Murray, because he married Jonathan.
True.
Anthony Hopkins plays Abraham Van Helsing.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves plays Jonathan Harker.
Yeah, originally it was going to be for Johnny Depp, but they wanted some kind of heartthrob for this movie.
They are not going to take anything away from Keanu Reeves, but looking for a good-looking young man who would attract the females to the movie. How's that? And Francis chose Keanu Reeves to fill the role. Of course, he had faith in him. He knew he had to do some voice training to try to do an English accent, and he did his best. And the thing is, that role wasn't a main role, so it doesn't really matter as much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not... he wasn't the main...
No.
He wasn't the main people. The main people.
Yeah, so Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, and Anthony Hopkins, and my light are the main actors.
Considering that Anthony in this, he actually plays 3 roles in this production. He plays the narrator and Van Helsing. He plays a priest in the opening scene, and let me see, he
also plays the narrator.
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute.
Go on.
I will mention one other person who has like a co-star bit role. Of course, he's a hero of mine. Tom Waits plays Renfield, the nut in the asylum. I love Tom Waits as a musician, singer, sort of.
Was he a jazz musician? I think he was.
Jazz blues, yeah. He's great. I think he's fantastic. And he's been in this movie and what's that other movie?
Mystery Men. Mystery Men.
Yeah, Mystery Men. He played a weird scientist guy in that. He pops up in the most interesting places.
I thought that one was probably one of his best roles, next to this one.
I love this role. He plays a nut really good. He's sort of okay. That's Tom. No, I like Tom Waits. I came along him years ago. I came along, I think it was a double album set called Night Hawks at the Diner. Now, some of you guys who like that sort of music might know the album. Yeah. It was really good and just blew me away. So, yeah.
So, who else?
Go on, Tom. I'm not going to go for all the other people.
Well,
I'll mention Sadie Frost. She plays Lucy Westenra.
Yeah, and I'll mention Richard E. Grant. He plays Dr. Jack Seward.
So, old Carrie Elwes also plays Lord Arthur Holmwood. There you go.
He was in Princess Bride, Robin Hood, Men in Tights, and he was in Saw movies.
Saw movie, the Saw franchise is one of those.
Yeah. And he's done very okay with his career.
And he was in that Nosferatu Symphony of Terror, that biodrama thing.
Yeah, he was. And I think he did okay for his career. He's made a big name for himself.
He pops up in the most interesting places as well.
Yeah, the last one who's not really interesting is Billy Campbell, who plays Quincy. Duh.
His name's Campbell?
Campbell, sorry.
And what did you call him?
Campbell.
Campbell.
Anyway, he plays Quincy, so don't sue me on that name.
Okay.
And anyway, the reason, aside from our obsession with trying to rewatch a Dracula that was really interesting to us, we wanted to go back a step to figure out what made a good Dracula story.
See, my first Dracula experience came in 1931, 32, when Bela Lugosi's production was shown on television when I was a young person, and I thought, "Oh, this is great." And that always stuck in my mind being the best of the best, really creepy. But when this one came along, even though I like Bela Lugosi's portrayal, I thought this production, it left it for dead.
Yeah. I think that Gary Oldman, he pulled it off. I mean, looking at the illustrations of the real...
He looked the part, he acted
Dracula,
the part. And
he did look like him.
He nailed the accent reasonably good too.
Quite right. Anyway, I thought the story was cool too.
Now, before you start telling the story, you promise to do a Reader's Digest version?
I'll try to keep it
short. Thank you.
Anyway, the story begins. Back to, say how many years ago?
It happened in 1462.
Yeah. Vlad the Impaler, he's going off to fight the war against the Turks, I think it was.
Yeah.
And
or against the Ottoman Empire, which was Turkey.
Yeah. So he goes off, he leaves behind his wife or girlfriend.
Who looks remarkably like Winona Ryder.
Yeah. Elisabeta, I don't know. Yeah. Elisabeta.
Who?
Elisabeta.
Well,
that's her name, Elisabeta. With an A on the end instead of a H.
Elisabeta.
I can't really say it. Anyway, I'll just call it Lizzie.
Lizzie, yeah.
Anyway, he goes off to war, and then he does a good job. He stakes so many people and stuff like that. And all the time, the Turks, taking revenge on him, they send a fake letter saying that Vlad was murdered in battle.
Died in battle, not murdered.
And she plunges herself into the river and...
dies, obviously.
And Vlad comes home, finds her, and there the priest tells him that now that she's taken a life, she is not going to go to heaven. She's going to be in purgatory until she gets... a second chance at living in, I guess, reincarnated. And he says he's going to take revenge on God for taking away the most precious thing in his life, because he was fighting this war for her and his country, and now that she's taken away, he doesn't give a damn about his country anymore
or anything else.
And so he takes his anger out on God, and he then stabs his sword into God's cross, and blood drips out of it, God's blood or Jesus' blood, and he drinks it, and therefore he's lived for years, or he's cursed for years and years because of his hatred towards God, and God is angry at him, obviously.
Now, I'll translate some of that. She didn't go to purgatory. Well, she wasn't going to go to purgatory. She's going to be damned to hell, not purgatory.
Yeah.
And he damned his soul by drinking the blood which came out of the cross and around the room, and it turned him into a vampire. There you go.
But he thinks that there's a chance that he might see Lizzie again. Anyway, we cut to the title card. The title card. Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Bottle music, if you will.
Anyway, we cross to London. Yeah, London.
Current time for the movie, which is 1897.
Yeah, modern time in
For
that
them,
part.
yeah.
And Jonathan Harker is replacing Renfield, who was a solicitor who's now gone mad, to go to Transylvania to give Dracula his new
He had some
place.
paperwork he had to get signed for the purchase of Carfax Abbey and some other places around London.
Yeah. So he goes off. Before he goes, he tells his wife, who looks oddly enough like Lizzie.
Lizzie.
Yeah. And he goes off, and they kiss eventually, and he heads off. And the lighting in these scenes that look like blood scenes is really creepy, and I gotta admit, the attention to detail they put into this, like layering different images over it, is so incredible.
I was going to talk about it later, but in the production, Francis Ford Coppola didn't want any modern techniques used for the special effects. So he did layering. Like you said, he'd actually do a film-on-film rear projection, which is the old way of doing things. He used the old style. And he sacked the special effects guys, and he brought his son in to do it.
Ooh.
How about that?
I gotta admit, it's incredible.
He used the old style, and it looks so damn good.
Yes.
Yeah.
I give him my hats off to the dear old Francis. Anyway, back to the story.
Carry on.
So Jonathan is writing letters. Just like Mike said, this is all the stories in this are written in letters and journal things, and other sort of like the thing you may have. If you guys read the books, you know that.
For those of you who haven't read Dracula, it's not a story. It's a group of letters and journal entries and the like, and ship's logs. That sort of stuff.
It's written in journals, letters, and stuff like that.
And that's where you get the storyline from.
And I got to admit, it's a different approach to. So this happens. This happens.
Yeah,
this
so
happens.
there's journal writing, and then there's acting around the journal entries.
Although some people complain that no one would write their journals just like that in so much detail work. I never write a journal.
That's nowadays.
Anyway, back
in those days they might have.
Anyway, Jonathan arrives in Transylvania. He's given a cross by a woman telling him, for your mother's sake, yada yada. And he eventually
10
arrives...
10 kopecks, please.
Yeah, he arrives at the a deserted area, and he meets with another coach, and it's creepy.
Castle.
And it starts taking him towards the castle. Wolves are howling, and the coach drives through this blazing bluish inferno thing.
Yeah, which didn't burn them.
Which didn't burn them. I guess it's sort of protection against the wolves.
Yeah, keep the wolves out.
Yeah, they soon.
It's like one of the electronic things for mosquitoes you plug into your PowerPoint.
Yeah. Anyway, they arrive at Dracula's castle. Jonathan goes inside the castle, and there he meets Dracula in his sinister silhouette shadow that does lots of...
His shadow seems to do a few different things than what he was doing. Like implying that things aren't all as they seem.
Yeah, he says, welcome to my home, that stuff like that.
Said the spider to the fly.
Anyway, he invites him in, and he gives him a tour of his home, gives him a good, decent meal, and tells him that he doesn't drink wine. Yeah,
I've heard that line a few times before. I don't drink wine.
And they talk about Dracula's history, or his family history, I should say. And And eventually they discuss the paperwork, and then Dracula notices the picture of Mina and feels a deep connection, knowing that's his old beloved's look or something.
It looks just like Elisabeta.
Yeah, and Jonathan questions why he's got a big map that details every single place of London, and he says, "Do you believe in destiny?" All that stuff. Like, I think he was aware that he's going to find his old love in that part of London.
A bit like pin the tail on the donkey, hey.
Yeah. He then tells Jonathan, "Congrats on your upcoming marriage, yada, yada, yada." And then he tells Jonathan, "You must stay for a month.
I need you here for a month.
Yeah.
Send some letters to your beloved and whatever, saying you're going to be here for a month, helping me organise things and instruct me on how things are in London and stuff."
Yeah. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, Mina is staying with Lucy, her childhood friend, companion,
and she's filthy
whatever.
rich. Yeah.
And Lucy, Mina narrates that she feels that her fiance would disapprove of their friendship because Lucy is wealthy, while Mina is just not wealthy. She's just a school mistress and her husband-to-be is a poor lawyer.
A poor lawyer's clerk or something rather.
Yeah. And he thinks very little of the fact that he's going to offer very little, not a lot, in this marriage.
He has lots of love to give. Ain't that lovely?
Anyway, eventually we meet Lucy's three suitors. We meet Quincy. We meet Jack Seward, the doctor, and we meet Arthur Homewood, obviously. Yeah. And she is very flirtish, and I'm amazed these guys.
All of them.
Yeah, it's all very funny.
And she's cute and sexy in a. If it's possible, cute and sexy in a bit of a naive little girl way. Yeah. How's that? Yeah.
And Mina narrates that she wishes that she could have been more loved and cherished like her. And we see the silhouette shadow of Dracula softly stroking her chin, telling her something in Romanian I can't really identify.
Yeah.
We then cross over to Renfield, who's living in the sanatorium,
eating bugs,
Eating bugs, and Jack Stewart is trying to work out what has made this man crackers.
He's gone bananas. How's that?
Yeah, he doesn't know heads or tails about what Renfield is saying. He's doing this for the master, a master coming and all that stuff. And he's begs Jack for a cat to feed and train and stuff, but I think
he really wanted to eat him.
He just wants to eat the cat.
Or drain its blood,
Anyway, we're back to Transylvania, and Jonathan is just shaving, and he's narrating about how he feels cringeworthy of being in this castle for the next month. And he thinks it's even more cringy that Dracula is obsessed with Mina's picture. Like, he doesn't understand.
Well, he was a good-looking babe,
Yeah, and while Jonathan is shaving, Dracula approaches, and he shaves and sees the cross on Jonathan's neck.
He gets startled a bit, yes.
Yeah, and he tells him not to
put your faith in things like that. Not in this country. Yes,
even though he got the cross from one of the country villages.
A lady down the street, peddler. Yeah.
And Jonathan says, "I've seen what this thing is. Bloody wolves chasing me through some blasted photo, and then we hear wolves howling outside, and Dracula says, 'Listen to them, children of the night.'
But the music they make. You call that music?
Well, anyway, he then disappears, and then Jonathan sneaks off. He was warned by Dracula not to sleep in any other rooms, which he...
And don't wander too far from your abode, your rooms.
Yeah, he then enters another room, and...
He gets a bit weary.
You hear in the background voices telling him to lie down. And then we see...
Take your pants off. No,
and then we see three beautiful women vampires. Half naked. And they start preying on him.
Seducing him. Not preying on him.
And
we're going to pray him later on.
as they're about to bite into him and seduce the crap out of him, he eventually...
And suck him dry.
Dracula appears, telling them to F off, and they say...
Go far away, yes.
But they beg Dracula. They have not been fed for the nice couple...
But he bought a present for them.
Yes, a living baby. And Jonathan screams in terror or anger or whatever, and Dracula chuckles like... And then we cross over to probably the next day, I don't know, don't care, and of the gypsies that are in Transylvania. They're taking boxes of earth and planning on sending them to England. Jonathan is baffled by this and thinks it's a bit peculiar. And anyway...
His strange ways, old Drac baby.
Then we cross back to England, where Lucy announces to Mina that she's finally accepted one of her proposals from her suitors, Arthur Holmwood. Yeah. And she's happy about it, and she thinks... But at the same time, Mina is less in an unhappy mood because she just got a letter from her fiancé saying he's going to be staying there for a couple of months and...
A month,
and therefore... He says he loves her, and the letter is very cold, like, it's indifferent.
Yeah, because he didn't want to say too much in case Dracula read it.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's what we...
Fight for Mail was supposed to be private. Yeah.
Well, Dracula is not that type of private person.
Yeah.
He probably thinks if he reveals something from what's going on, he'll probably do something worse.
Gobble him up or something rather, yeah.
I read somewhere that he in one of the... When he was sending a message off to Mina, he was going to send a cryptic message to her, but Dracula kind of thought it was peculiar, and he burns that particular part of the message. It was in the book, obviously, and I won't go into details. Anyway, moving on.
Take the book again.
Anyway, while Mina and Lisa are discussing, rain starts pouring, and we see in the clouds Dracula's eyes burning into them, and he disappears. And then we cross over to the boat where Dracula's on it, and he takes a nibble at the crew members, and the captain says that there's something or someone on board
he
that boat.
He ended up in the ship's log, just like Captain Kirk,
Yeah, we see blood and the creature jumping and biting into the crew members one by one.
And obviously, if you've read the story, by the time the boat gets to shore, there's no one on board. They're all gone.
Anyway, Dracula, he then explores London, and he kind of comes to Lucy's house, and he beckons her to sleepwalk seductively to where he wants her to come. And Lucy and Mina follows. She follows her, trying to get a stop, right there. But you know what they often say about sleepwalking? You cannot wake up a sleepwalker.
It's not very good. No,
don't know why, but that's the case. Maybe.
Who knows? Yeah, whatever. She's having a drink of water.
Anyway, so Mina follows Lucy into the night. Lucy's wearing a seductive red outfit.
And she looks hot. I'm sorry.
I don't know what it's about, but I gotta admit, they knew what kind of costumes to provide for Lucy.
No, the costume, really got it right. Actually, when they actually did the costumery for this movie, they were told not to copy everybody else.
Ah, good idea.
Make it up. No, it said take it out of history and take it out of your imagination.
Good point.
So anything got there, they got old photographs, old paintings, whatever, and they got ideas of what sort of clothes they wore and how they would embellish it with their own imagination.
Yeah, considering I've watched the original ones before this one, and they always make Mina and Lucy's outfits look very conservative.
And Dracula like a head waiter.
Anyway, so as Lucy approaches Dracula, he begins to do a seductive thingy-wing and eventually bites Lucy, and he sees Mina there, and he says, no, see me. And he disappears, and leaving Mina and Lucy baffled and thinking that I don't think they even would remember what
Lucy was... she was mesmerised, so she wouldn't have seen anything. Sleepwalking. And Mina's memory was
wiped
of that. so she didn't see what happened. But about the same time, or a bit earlier, didn't the wolf escape from the local zoo?
Yeah, so local wolf.
And they thought the local escaped wolf was doing the damage to people.
Yeah, so it kind of was like a scapegoat, to use the term.
Yeah, scapegoat. Escape wolf.
What a better cover for Dracula's killings to have a wolf escape the zoo to do the killings.
Yeah, well, make it look like it. So he did it.
Yeah, anyway.
That's not very nice.
So, anyway, Van Helsing narrates, or the narrator relates, saying that while in the daytime vampires can walk amongst them, but
they don't have as much power.
But they don't have very much power. So we see Dracula wandering the streets of London in normal wear, and this scene is pretty much like a newsreel. Or not.
Oh, Lord. Look, an old silent movie.
Yeah, an old silent movie. It's very fast footage stuff.
But yeah, a bit jittery and fast forwardy, and that, that's the way they did the old movies to give a feeling, because he was interested in actually going to the cinema, which was showing this new invention called moving pictures.
Anyway, before we get to that, Lucy eventually confides to Jack Seward about how she's slowly changing since the night, and he gives her a sedative, and we see the two drain holes here.
They weren't mosquito marks, and it wasn't a hickey either. Yeah.
Anyway, while this is happening, Mina meets Dracula in town, and he offers to escort her for a bit, provided that she'll escort him to the movie
He follows
theatre.
her around, and he gets her attention. He wants to go to the cinema, so she shows him where the cinema is.
Yeah, there you
go.
At first, she thinks of him as a friend and all that stuff, and he eventually takes her to a dark corner, and he's about to plunge his vampire fangs into her. But then we get distracted by the wolf that escaped from the zoo, who started prowling around the...
He came out of the cinema.
Yeah.
And Vlad, or Drac, or whatever, says, "Hey, Wolfie." He talks to him in Moldavian, or whatever language it is.
Yeah. And the wolf comes over like it was a nice
like a puppy.
Oh. And Mina approaches the wolf and Dracula, and she softly touches
He says, he likes you. And he pats the wolf. He's
and
supposed to be a wild creature.
He says, there's much to learn from beasts. Meaning she starts to warm up to Dracula in this scene. And in the next couple of other scenes, we see her growing to like Dracula and starts to form a loving relationship with him.
Nice.
Anyway, back to the story. Lucy, meanwhile, is getting visits from Dracula in a way.
He's a two-timer, isn't he, guys?
Yeah. I think he's more or less using her as a bit of a
blood
bag.
He needs a drink.
While at the same time...
it keeps him young, doesn't it? Yeah.
That way he continues courting Mina, so he doesn't bite her right away.
No, he doesn't want to bite her.
Anyway...
He's a nice guy.
Yeah. Anyway, he eventually Van Helsing arrives. He gets invited by Jack Seward to come and treat Lucy, and they use a blood transfusion thingy. Mike and I were discussing this last night, and this is important.
Well, here is something for you people who aren't medically inclined. As far as I am aware, you can't just take the blood out of one person and bung it in the other unless you've got a match or a compatible blood type.
Exactly.
So you might have O positive and an A negative or something or other. They don't mix. You can actually kill somebody by giving them the transfer.
Yeah, technically, that Lucy at this point, after her visitation from Dracula, she was given 2 bits of blood from 2 men, and while I don't know their blood types, that would be considered very risky, wouldn't you say?
Well, in today's standards, what we know, they could have actually killed her, but for the sake of the movie, we sort of overlooked that bit.
Yeah. Anyway, not Dracula. Van Helsing tells Jack Stewart, this is not an ordinary disease they're fighting. It's a creature that hunts its prey by night and sucks the blood from the living. And
a lawyer. No, sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, meanwhile, while this is all happening, Jonathan Harker, back in Transylvania, he's been sucked dry, technically, at this point.
Yeah, he's dead on his feet almost. He's empty. You get a hollow sound when you tap on him.
Yeah. The three vampire brides that Dracula left Jonathan with are draining him dry, and his last chance of getting away is to get, what was it? He had to go over the wall and try to get away.
Climb down the wall, but go along a parapet, really, a skinny one, and try to get to a place where he can jump into the river from a low height.
Yeah,
and then get away from the castle.
He eventually later on, arrives at the convent in, it doesn't matter where.
Convent.
And the sister Agatha, this is important, lets his Mina, telling her that her husband, her fiance, is at the chapel and at the convent, and is in desperate need of her,
and suggests she come at once.
Yeah, Mina is over the moon, but then she realizes that she must not tell Jonathan about her brief relationship with Dracula at the moment, and so she decides to cut off all ties and sends Dracula a brief letter telling him, "Sorry, but I have to go to my husband.
Party's over." Yeah.
Dracula gets upset.
And he kills Lucy, makes him the vampire.
Yeah, before we get to that, in a weakened state, Lucy is. After she's been given a transfusion, she still looks very weak. To me, she does. She's able to talk to Mina and tells her to take her wedding ring. It's a wedding ring, and gives it to Lucy. I'm guessing,
take it with her so she can use it as a wedding ring when she sees Jonathan. Isn't that
and she
lovely?
says it's her wedding gift too. And this is probably I think at this point, Lucy knows that she's going to die soon. I think in my mind,
possibly,
and knows that very soon she will not see Mina again anytime soon. Anyway, back to the story.
Carry on.
While she's meeting Mina for the last time, she goes into a vampiric rage, and we notice right away her two canine teeth are growing.
Yeah, the little pointy ones. Like you got the incisors at the front, and just across you get little pointy ones like the dogs. Those ones, they're canine teeth.
Yeah. Anyway, Mina writes her letter to Vlad Dracula telling her we're no longer in a relationship. Sorry, I have to go to my fiancé.
It's so sad.
And
she
narrates that she feels guilty about this. Like she's just, betrayed both men. Like she feels like one part of her feels like she just did something really bad. Like, subconscious, she thinks she's done something bad.
I don't think she consummated the relationship with Drac Baby, but she thought about it, maybe.
And eventually, like Mike says, Dracula takes his bitter revenge on Lucy, draining her dry, and she dies, and Van Helsing says...
makes her into a vampire.
Yeah. Eventually, Mina gets married to Jonathan Harker, and just so you guys know, quick interesting thing I found out about this wedding scene is that, that during the filming of the ceremony was, the Roman minister there was a real Roman minister who was actually...
A Roman or Roman Catholic?
Roman Catholic type minister who was presenting the scene, meaning he's not an actor or anything. This was a real priest, and he actually did do the wedding scene with the actors. And to this day, a lot of people keep wondering whether or not the two actors actually got married.
You never know.
Anyway, it doesn't matter at this point. Because the only way you can be able to 100% be married to that one is that it's written down on paper.
Well, yes, generally.
Even though to the eyes of God, that's a little different.
Adam and Eve didn't have a piece of paper.
No. And not too many historic people had pieces of paper to clarify. Anyway, back to the story.
Cavemen didn't have a piece of paper.
Yeah. So anyway, Van Helsing tells Jack Stewart that the party isn't over yet, so they have to go to Lucy's crypt to finally put an end to her suffering.
Yes.
Or whatever. Anyway, they eventually do, and they're mortified when they find her body isn't in the coffin. And Van Helsing explains to Arthur...
She's gone for the walk.
She's gone for a walk. She wouldn't just be sitting in the coffin just waiting for us. And we do see her appear, and she appears as the beautiful lady, beautiful lady, and she's carrying a child.
Which she's going to have for dinner.
Yeah. Interesting thing is, the child in the scene with when Lucy is covered in the makeup for the actress, she was actually really scared of her. I think I would be scared too at that age too. Anyway,
Well, she was kidnapped.
and it took Francis Coppola and another crew member to calm the child down to do the scene again. Go on, give us another one.
Yeah, give us another.
Yeah, another shot.
Carry on. Hurry up.
Anyway,
I said Reader's Digest version.
Sorry. Anyway, they eventually, Van Helsing was able to coax her back into the coffin, and Arthur, with the mallet and the steak, stakes her in the heart, and Van Helsing chops her head off. Paul.
I always use a steak. They never use a sausage, you know that?
It's interesting, in this scene, the steak in this one is not wood, it's actually iron. Didn't you... I
said to you that I don't think manufactured items can do it. Wood is a natural product, and iron is more natural than steel, because steel's been processed.
True.
Iron's iron ore melted down and just, I believe,
And dear old Van Helsing gives Mina the Reader's Digest version of what became of Lucy, saying, yes, she was in pain, we cut off her head, we stuck a stake for her heart, and then we burned the pieces, and then she fell apart.
And dinner. Yeah.
Jonathan was a bit appalled by this description, and so I guess Mina was.
Oh, yeah.
And he then explains that he doubted everything when he was at Dracula's, and feels like, he just feels like that all this time being in the company of the women, he feels like it was all his fault. Like he brought in hell to London. And then Van Helsing asks this very important question to Jonathan: did you, by the time you were spending time all this time with the women, did you drink from their blood? And he says no, and of course that means that he hadn't been converted.
He just been a vessel to have a drink out of.
And Jonathan tells him where exactly the Dracula is sleeping, Carfax Abbey. So Van Helsing, Arthur, Jack Seward, and Quincy and Jonathan, they plan on doing a raid on Dracula's estate and burning the place to the ground.
Yeah, they break up in all these boxes of earth they could find and strewn them all over the ground and set fire to the coffins and then set fire to the building. So, I wonder if it's insured.
Don't know. Anyway, Jack Seward takes Mina to the sanatorium to be protected there, thinking that she's safe there, but I doubt it. And there we learn from Renfield that Renfield has been told by Dracula about Mina and how he's going to come for her. And of course, in his good mind sense, tells her that it's not safe to be here because he knows Dracula has been visiting here. Because he knows Dracula is going to come eventually, and this is not safe. Anyway, he eventually rants and raves to Dracula that, how dare you make her immortal? You promised me immortality. Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
He's ranting, raving. Anyway,
so Drac kills him.
Yeah, Mina is placed inside Jack's safe area, and while this is happening, while all the men are destroying and sanctifying the boxes of Earth, so to prevent Dracula from returning and going back to his usual sleeping areas. He eventually had other plans of eventually arriving at... He kills Renfield, and he converts Mina to becoming a vampire. At first, he objects to doing it because he didn't want to, because he loves her so much. He
didn't want to condemn her to a life of darkness like him.
Yeah, he then tells her the truth that he killed Lucy and converted her to vampirism. I think he was doing Lucy a big favour by turning into a vampire, because that blood could have killed her. Wouldn't you say? That, the transfusion could have killed her?
Probably not. Not in the story.
I know, but you never know. She could have died either way, is what I'm saying.
Whatever.
Anyway,
moving right along.
So,
Reader's Digest,
So Dracula, he drinks her blood, and and he gives her his blood, and then we get the Reed-Digest version where Van Helsing appears, and he tries to say a few religious words and and Dracula rants and raves and says that he was betrayed and what God had done to him. He looks like a total bat creature. He looks really creepy.
Batman. Yeah.
Eventually escapes in rat form, and then Van Helsing uses hypnosis to get Mina to tell him about where Dracula's going.
He's going home to Carpathian Mountains.
So Van Helsing, Mina, and the rest of the group, they head on train to try to get to Dracula's home before he does. Of course, Dracula is reading Mina's mind, giving him the hints of where they're going, and the gypsies were able to intercept them at every turn, wouldn't you say?
Exactly.
So they then decide to get Van Helsing and Mina to go by carriage to
the castle.
Yeah, as a bit of a decoy. While Jonathan and the rest of the group, they follow by horseback to try to beat Dracula's coach to the castle. So eventually Van Helsing, Mina go by coach. They arrive at the castle, and then the three vampire brides, they try to possess Mina in their weird way.
And the same ones who attacked Jonathan earlier in the story.
Yeah, and thanks to Van Helsing's quick skills, he uses a bit of host, and presses it into Mina's forehead to prevent the possession of the evil possession thing.
Yep, and he just puts a fire ring around them and stuff.
Originally it was host, but it doesn't matter. And eventually the next morning, he cuts up the vampire lady's heads, chop, 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 and yells, and he throws them down into the river below. And then we cross to Dracula and all the other guys chasing after his wagon towards the castle. And Mina, in her state, quickly uses the special blue flames to try to make the weather acting funny, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. He has control over good things like that.
Yeah, and anyway, eventually his coach arrives there, and the men quickly try to fight the gypsies as much as they could. And eventually Dracula rises up, and in his state, Quincy takes his big dagger. He has this very big dagger, and he stabs it into Dracula's chest. Of course, he's very badly injured because of the gypsy stabbed him in the back too. And Mina, taking one of the guns, tells Jonathan and the others, if her time comes, will you do the same thing for me? And Jonathan doesn't think he has the strength to kill his beloved. And so she and Dracula, they enter the church, and the others are left behind to wait. And they grieve over Quincy's dead body, and Van Helsing says, we all become God's madmen.
Yeah.
All of us. Then we cross over to the church, and where Dracula is making peace with himself, realizing...
The chapel in his castle, not the church.
No, the chapel inside the castle, duh.
Yeah.
And he's making peace with himself and God, and God restores his appearance.
That's what he was 400 years or 500 years ago when he was here.
Yeah, and he slowly dies, and Mina lops his head off, and we watch above that he's finally reunited with his beloved.
Yeah, Elisabeta, yeah.
And if I did see the deleted scene, which I'd have, Mina does return to Jonathan, and they walk off into the sunset, sunset or sunrise.
Sunrise, whatever.
Sunset. The end. Sorry for it being a long one, guys. Forgive me.
No, okay. There you go.
Yes.
Now, it was a good story.
It's just a long story, and I really enjoyed giving you the details of it. It's just got so much going for it.
See, it's a gothic horror, which is really a gothic drama horror.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a good story with suspense, bit of action, creepy stuff.
Yeah.
It really hits all the marks, this movie. Now, some people say, oh, yes, but it was 30 years ago. Yeah, but I don't think anything has surpassed it since. Francis Ford Coppola, when he puts his hand on something like this, he did The Godfather, he did other things. And he touches something, yeah, it's definitely different.
Yeah.
And this comes different in a good way.
Yeah. I often think this one, the Christopher Lee's versions of Dracula,
they weren't bad.
And let me think,
the Hammer ones, yeah, they were bad. But
Dracula 2000, and let me think, Van Helsing are probably one of my favorites of the takes on this Dracula story. I was a bit. I thought when they did the Invitation movie, it would give me a different approach to the story. I mean, I felt a bit short-lived when I think about watching that movie. I feel like it didn't reach my expectations. Would you say, Mike?
What do you mean?
It just feels
the
like,
other one?
Yeah,
it was lacking something.
It
But
lacks
we're not
something.
reviewing that one. We're reviewing this one.
I know. I mean, I was just making comparisons with all the Dracula movies we've seen. There are even the ones that just go directly to television. So there are some things to take away from those sort of things. Anyway, so what were some of the bad receptions to this movie?
Look, it wasn't bad receptions. Okay.
I'd just like to hear what they...
look, Rotten Tomatoes gave it a pretty good, fair enough, 76%, yada, yada, yada. They got, it's got tongue-in-cheek sort of stuff from the people who do the comments. It says, overblown in the best sense of the word. Francis Ford Coppola's vision of Bram Stoker's Dracula rescues a character from decades of campy interpretations and features some terrific performances to boot. Okay. So somebody, Sir Vincent Canby, has said the film was created with enthusiasm of a precocious film student who has magically acquired a master's command of his craft. So everyone's got sort of tongue-in-cheek sort of things. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, okay, fine. But not saying, hey, it's a really great movie,
But you got to admit, these guys like Francis Coppola, they went to film school and they experienced firsthand old movies because that's part of the criteria. When you go to film school, you have to learn about old movies to know what you want to achieve.
So most of them gave a good to very good critique on the movie, but they did knock two of the actors.
Yeah.
And only for these reasons, I believe. Okay. Winona Ryder, even though she's a good actress, they said she had trouble with the English accent.
Okay.
Gee. American actor trying to do an English... Well, they've done that with people doing trying to be Australian actors and stuff too. And they put on a really dodgy accent sometimes.
Yeah, very dodgy.
Whether they're Americans or English or somebody, just why do you get an Australian to do the accent? So you've got a problem here. You've got an English person. You can't make them sound like an American easily, and you can't get Americans to sound totally like an English person. You can try, and depending how good the person can emulate the accent. Now, Keanu Reeves had the same problem, so people weren't as kind to him.
No, I've heard
saying
that.
he sounded like a Californian trying to do an English accent. Well, considering Francis Ford Coppola wanted him in the movie to start with, because he wanted a pretty boy matinee idol type person to play Jonathan Harker, which might add, it was not the main role in the movie.
Bear in mind.
He was like a co-star. He was a bit part. Yeah. He was being attacked by the vampire ladies while everything else is going on.
Yeah, the whole point of the story was to focus mainly on
Mina
and Gary and
Dracula and Van Helsing. Those people. So he was actually in the background, so he wasn't that imperative.
Yeah, he was a victim.
But he did his best to learn the English accent for the role. Yeah. And the problem was he was concentrating too hard on the accent, which probably affected his acting in the movie a little bit and made it a bit stiff.
Yeah.
Ta-da. So he's still a good actor. So, but people just can be so unkind.
People they tend to concentrate on the fact that all the actors in this production are not English actors. They're mostly Americans who lived in America all their lives, and therefore they have to act like an English.
Yeah.
Rewrite the wheel by pretending to be English.
Well, there's an old movie that you guys in America may not be aware of. There's an old movie called The Summer of the 17th Doll. It had another name I can't remember. Could have went to America a different name. Now, Ernest Borgnine was playing an Australian cane cutter. Now, ain't no way in the world that Ernest Borgnine was going to sound like an Australian cane cutter. And his mate, who was an Aussie's offsider, was an English guy trying to be an Australian cane cutter. And neither of them actually made it when it came to the accent. But guess what? Still a fine movie. So don't get so picky on the accents, okay?
Yeah.
I like the movie, actually, The Summer of the 17th Doll. But the point is that you can't always nail the accents if you don't have the skill to do it. You can do it as close as you can, or just forget about it and just try to lose the accent you have a little bit. Yeah. And that's what they do. Ernest Borgnine did a great role in that movie. I think it's called Summer of Passion or something. I can't remember what it's called.
Your word for it.
It had 2 names, that movie, Summer of the 17th Doll. And he did a really good role. He played the main role in that movie. And I love that movie, even though it's a really, really old movie. It's done in the 50s. And an old black and white movie. And it was great for its time.
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely did an Australian. He didn't have an Australian accent. He had an American accent playing Australian. So who cares?
Yeah.
So yeah, get off the old accent bandwagon when it comes. Let's see the acting skills.
I remember watching a stage performance of Dracula, and they were able to twist the story a bit, making out that instead of being in England, they were somewhere in America, and this is, I think, somewhere. Where do they have Mardi Gras, Mike?
New Orleans.
Yes, they made out that they're in New Orleans, and therefore they came up with some really good dialogue for it. And I got to admit, it was nice that they reinvented the wheel in that adaptation of it, even if it's just a student's film production. That was good. That was really good.
And the kids are probably based down there, so they did it down there. So excuse me.
And I really enjoyed the accents and the stuff they put together for those scenes. It kind of grew on me, and I still watch it ever so often on YouTube.
Getting back to Francis Ford Coppola, to me, it's not made a dud movie.
No.
And this is one of his good movies.
I think it's very memorable. It's probably one of the best adaptations of Dracula's story.
I think it's the best. Now, I'm not saying anything against the 1931-32 version with Bela Lugosi. That's in a different type of genre.
Yeah.
Okay. But honestly, this really puts the icing on the cake, this one. Same as when he did the Frankenstein one. The Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I think he did that one. He gave it his touch as well, and it was different. And a fine movie. So, yeah. Anyway, excuse me, I'm starting to cough a bit, so I want to cut this short.
Do you want to rate this now?
Yeah, wait a minute. It is available on eBay and Amazon, rentable on Amazon, or for purchase, and for purchase on eBay. And obviously it's around. You can still get it. You can get your 4K ones and everything else. Really good. Being an old movie, might be some VHS out there, so keep an eye out so you don't buy the wrong one. Now, rating it, I'm going to give it a 10.
Yeah, I'm going to give it 10.5 out of 10.
Because one reason is good acting, and Francis, without using too much modern special effects, use the old styles, came up trumps with the special effects.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's believable, and that's what you want a movie to be. You want it to spirit your way to another place, and that's what this movie does.
Yeah,
there you go.
I did like the colours, the filters they used, like very vibrant reds,
they use
blues.
some filters at night, like blue filters and red filters and stuff, create atmosphere and stuff. The old style of stuff, which is great, it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so for those of you, and I will say that those of you who haven't seen it, because it is 30 years old, and if you're about 20 years old, you might not have seen it. It was an old movie when you were born. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, it's a good look.
Yeah, it's a good watch.
Yeah. And it's very entertaining. And I must admit, the acting, the storyline, I can't find anything wrong with it.
Yeah, I don't think anything wrong in it either. I don't know what, apart from the actors, I think that's about. I don't have any beef with them, and I don't think I have any beef about the storyline either.
And the lead role,
what?
I got a mental block. The leading roles were well cast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop it, I can't. I'm having trouble breathing, guys. I'm going to go in a minute. I'm going to die.
Yeah, I do think this is a well-developed story, and I think I would, if I don't think anything will come close to the story as this version.
Yeah, but I've got to take my hat off to Anthony Hopkins and Gary Oldman because their character playing in this. And I will say character playing because obviously Gary Oldman was playing a demented vampire, young and old, and Van Helsing role played by Hopkins was he was a bit off the twig as well. I think a bit crazy in his own way. So yeah, well, he added something to that role. He spiced it up quite nicely.
Well, even Jack Stewart was a bit on the. I think he was tinkering with opium and drugs.
Yeah, we think he was on morphia or something. Or something. I think I didn't see the bottle properly when he was doing the injection, but he was on drugs.
Yeah,
so yeah.
It's back then. I think that the drugs were well known back then as they are now.
Morphine was a common drug back in those days.
Yeah, it still is.
Yeah, no, back in those days.
Yeah, back in those.
They didn't have ice and stuff. Okay, they weren't. They weren't doing LSD.
But they did have opium dens that were pretty popular back in those days.
But he was doing morphine, which a lot of people used to inject back in those days.
Anyway,
let's kill it.
So let's take this moment to check. Be sure to check it out, guys. Let us know in the comments what your favourite version of Dracula is. We think this one is a really good one.
There's a lot of good ones out there. Mm-hmm. Dracula 72 AD was a good one. Mm-hmm. That wasn't bad. I like that one.
Dracula AD 2017.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong.
Which one was the one where... no, I can't remember. We got mental block. Yeah,
mental
don't
block.
worry. There's so many Dracula movies out there.
Yeah, but I got to admit, this one was a good one. It had good music.
This is the top of the pile.
Good lighting, good directorship, and good editing and stuff like that. And good costuming. Yes, very important.
Yeah, well, you said good editing. Yeah, the editing, it was done well. Mm-hmm. So, anyone who hasn't seen this movie and has to look at it will not be disappointed.
Yes, and good lighting too, obviously. I don't know who did the lighting, obviously.
Well, yeah, obviously it goes with part and parcel, yeah.
Anyway, that's about it for us tonight, guys. So feel free to check it out and let us know in the comments what you think of this Dracula movie. All right, thanks for listening to us, guys. This is Sarah Stephenson.
And Michael.
Saying, see you guys next time on Boys and Ghouls Film Review.
Bye for
guys.
now.